Following program is an original production of WYCC PBS Chicago.
Tonight, bracing for a showdown, parents and teachers are up in arms over the Chicago Public Schools plan to close 54 schools. CPS says it will save millions, but at what cost?
Keeping our kids safe. Violent crimes against children are making headlines. So where do we turn? How some small groups are making a big difference.
What happens in Chicago stays in Vegas. How schools in Sin City are betting on Chicago's troubles to help fill thousands of jobs.
And Cook County Jail, 8 inmates away from a crisis. What has the county sheriff worried as summer approaches? These stories and much more tonight on In the Loop.
Good evening, I'm Barbara Pinto.
And I'm Chris Bury. Tonight we take an in-depth look at the unprecedented move to shut down dozens of public schools in Chicago.
The city schools are ranked among the worst in the nation, and school officials say all of the closings are necessary to fix a broken system.
But some community leaders and parents aren't buying it and have vowed to fight. Late Wednesday afternoon, protesters filled Chicago streets, taking their boisterous battle to the city's epicenter. Police ticketed more than 120 demonstrators. Hundreds gathered at Daley Plaza to give Mayor Emanuel and public school officials an earful. They are outraged by the plan. It would close 54 elementary schools, nearly all of them on the south and west sides of the city in predominantly African-American neighborhoods. One of the parents, Jeanette Taylor, says she doesn't trust the motives of public school officials.
You are not talking about reform. You're not talking about education. You're talking about buildings. You're talking about money. That has nothing to do with the education of our kids.
Taylor has lived in the Bronzeville neighborhood her entire life. She attended Mollison Elementary, and so do her children. Mollison is not closing, but it will be receiving more than 400 new students from nearby Overton Elementary, which is slated for closure.
We already have grade levels where there are 36, 37 kids. We have 3 grade levels where we cannot take another child from that grade, so how are we going to work that out?
School officials claim the shutdowns will save $560 million over the next 10 years, money that can be funneled back into schools and neighborhoods that have been underserved for many years.
We're cognizant of that, and again, we're frustrated that folks that were running the school system previously didn't address this, and we're here today, and we're going to address it today.
The differences within the Chicago public school system can be startling. G2 Brown with the Kenwood Oakland Community Organization calls it two-tier education, the haves and the have-nots.
Lakeview has 12 advanced placement classes. Dyett has none. Lakeview has Mandarin Chinese, French, Spanish, German, regulars, honors, and advanced placement. Dyett has regulars Spanish 1 and 2. Lakeview had darkroom photography, advanced studio art, etc., etc. The Dyett students had to take art online.
A Chicago public schools spokesperson points out that Dyett High School has fewer students and is being phased out. Brown says schools are far more than buildings, that they provide important foundations for low-income communities.
When you shut down the institutions like the police stations around here, the trauma centers, the hospitals, the grocery stores and the schools, you make life for people in the neighborhood almost unbearable.
Chicago Teachers Union President Karen Lewis insists the school closings are part of a larger plan to privatize public schools.
This was Rahm Emanuel's number, the number that we have now, 50. It was always that number. They put out 300 and some, then they came back with 129. They were always intent in having this number, this shock and awe, this complete destruction of publicly funded public education in Chicago.
Brown says rather than closing schools and disrupting neighborhoods, the Chicago School Board needs to work better with parents. That, he argues, would make for a much smoother transition.
If not, then what they're doing is they're gearing up for an epic fight, because I think people are going to fight for their school.
Some parents are concerned about the dangers facing their children as they cross gang lines to get to their schools. Joining us to talk about all the issues surrounding these closings, Jadine Chow, Chief and Safety Security Officer at Chicago Public Schools, and Lizzie Schiffman, who's a reporter for DNAinfo.com. Welcome.
Thank you.
So we know that there's a lot of concern among parents as children go to these new schools. What can you do in the school system to guarantee their safety?
So in the community meetings that we've had leading up to this moment, one of the things we heard most was it's so important for parents to know that their children will be able to travel to and from school safely. So a key part of our safety transition plan is we plan to offer safe passage in every welcoming school through the system. What that means is we'll be partnering with community-based organizations, community groups that know the community, they know the people who live there, they know the children that they're going to be serving. Through this, what we'll have is adults stationed at key routes along the way to school to help children get to school safely.
This is going to cost millions of dollars, though, from what I've read, about $8 million more dollars in addition to the $8 million you're already spending on this program. Isn't the whole idea of closing schools to save money, and now you have to spend more to keep the kids safe?
We already do have a successful Safe Passage program in 35 of our high schools and 4 of our elementary schools. We're looking to invest another $7.7 million in the Safe Passage for these transitions. It's very important to us that students are able to travel safely, and this is an investment that CPS needs to and has to make.
You think this is going to be money well spent?
Well spent. Our CEO, Dr. Barbara Bird Bennett, has made it our top priority to make sure that our students are able to be safe during these transitions and successful in their achievement in their new schools.
Liz, there was a lot of anger. You were at that demonstration last night, yet the mayor seems to be holding firm. Is this a done deal? Are these schools going to close?
You know, a lot of people have said that it seems like there's no turning back at this point. There are still a few more hurdles to clear. Dr. Bird Bennett has said there will be 3 more meetings on each school before it's closed. So it could change, but right now there's not a lot of optimism, especially among teachers.
Does it seem that Mayor Emanuel has made up his mind on this issue?
I think he doesn't seem to be giving a lot of leeway, so I'm hesitant to put words in his mouth, but I think a lot of teachers believe this is already kind of a finalized decision.
When you look at these protests, one of the big issues obviously is the racial question. There is this charge that these closings affect predominantly African American schools on the south and west side. As a school official, how do you deal with this very real perception in the community?
We think it's so important to continue the conversation, continue the dialogue with parents, teachers, key stakeholders in the community. This is about providing equal access to quality education. And so we just have to have a conversation around making sure that we understand each other's side and we can work to meet each other so that we can help the children, because I think that's one thing we all agree on, is that it has to be about the children.
But when people say, look, this hurts African American communities more than affluent white communities, what's your answer to that?
So what we would say is this is about providing equal access to quality education. And so we would disagree and say that it's important that they understand what we're trying to accomplish through doing these transitions.
Liz, what about that politically? We have seen some of the African American clergy that were allied with Mayor Daley now very upset about Mayor Emanuel's role in this and his decision. Do you see this as a political question for the mayor?
I think it will be regardless, just because people are so heated on this issue. And, you know, from the beginning, when we saw the list of underutilized schools, before any decisions were made, a vast majority of those were on the south and west sides. So I don't think this is a surprise to anyone, but I do think that it's going to be very closely watched on a national scale.
Part of closing these schools, you have all these buildings now, 60-some buildings. What becomes of those buildings? And there is concern in the communities that they could become havens for gangs and drugs. What does the school district do about those abandoned buildings?
So our CEO and others within our organization are reaching out to community stakeholders and taking input from them to take in ideas. There will be a lot of work to be done to ensure that those buildings are maintained in a safe manner so that we're not in that situation that you just described. So there's a lot of groundwork that needs to be done. but we are committed to making sure that happens.
Liz, is this one of the stories that we reporters like to say has legs? In other words, it's not going to be over in a matter of days or weeks or months. Do you see this perhaps even lingering to the next election?
Absolutely. I mean, I think the point you bring up about the future of these vacant buildings is going to be one of the most salient in the coming months and even years, because we spoke with a realtor at DNA Info who told us that a big factor in determining the amount of value or the amount of money that CPS can get if they do follow through with plans to sell this building is the fact that they turn them over quickly. So if that doesn't happen, I think we could be dealing with a lot of vacant buildings throughout the city and trying to figure out what to do with them for a long time.
Jadine, the school district has made a lot of promises here, among them that the children will go to better quality academic schools, and that, as you say, that the children will be safe. You've made a lot of promises here as a school district. Are you officials really in the hot seat now over the next few months as this unfolds?
We believe that we have the right strategies in place. We believe that with the support of the mayor, our CEO, Barbara Bird Bennett, and our board, that we are doing what we need to do to make sure our children get a quality education.
But are you in the hot seat here? This is a lot of pressure on you folks.
I think that there is a lot of pressure on everyone to make sure that our children get a good education. CPS cannot do this alone. When it comes to safety, we're counting on the support of community members, of parents, and the students themselves. We're all going to have to work together on this.
All right, Jadine Chow, thank you very much. And Lizzie Schiffman, we appreciate your coming today. Young people in the city are facing so many challenges, and the need for support is great. And here's Barbara with more.
Thanks, Chris. Keeping kids safe, it really does take a village. Now, more than ever, communities are leaning heavily on nonprofit youth organizations to not only protect our children, but to help them grow up to be responsible men and women.
It's important for us to do all we can to help and guide these young people on the path to success.
Every kid needs an outlet and a mentor, a place to go where they feel safe and nurtured. And now more will have that, thanks to a $4.5 million pledge by Mayor Rahm Emanuel to expand youth programs across the city. A number of youth organizations have been around for decades, among them Youth Guidance Becoming a Man, the South Shore Drill Team, and the Jesse White Tumblers, named for the group's founder, now Illinois Secretary of State Jesse White. He started the program 54 years ago.
And I believe that society has an obligation to help provide an outlet for these young people.
Giving kids purpose and a safe haven are key, especially in neighborhoods where high unemployment and poverty lead to violence on the streets.
I cannot save all kids, and I cannot provide a program for all kids, but when we have organizations like the South Shore Drill Team and some of those other wonderful organizations, I feel good in that they're helping our young people to grow tall and straight. They're giving them an outlet.
1, 2, 3, 4, stretch.
Michael Borum knows what it's like to be a kid in need of structure and guidance. This former member of the South Shore Drill Team now helps run the group.
I can say this about Jesse White and our program. We gather the same type of kids, you know, from different neighborhoods, low-income kids, all throughout the city of Chicago, to get them something positive to do.
Nearly every member of the drill team graduates high school. That's a fact Michael and the group's founder, Arthur Robinson, take pride in.
1, 2, 3, Warriors!
We go into a school and we say, the first thing we say is, what are your needs?
Youth Guidance Becoming a Man has been around since 1969 and was one of the first organizations to partner with Chicago schools. Today, their presence is felt in over 70 schools, both public and charter, serving over 14,000 children, mostly African American and Latino, all boys and young men.
Some of our schools say, we're really having a hard time right now with our youth and our security personnel. We can guide our BAM program to address that.
BAM, or Becoming a Man, is designed to do just that.
I mean, working with a lot of these young men, the first thing that comes to mind is life can be very difficult and life can be very challenging.
When we check in, we do pies, physically, intellectually, emotionally, and spiritually. And with that, I just let it all out right there if I can't talk to somebody else. So it's a safe haven right here.
I get another aspect of manhood and what men are supposed to be and look like. And respect of womanhood, the individualism of being a man instead of a boy and growing up.
Collectively, these three groups have served more than 30,000 Chicago youth. The goal, to reach tens of thousands more.
Now, you're in the loop.
Thanks, South Shore Drill Team, and we will continue with the theme of keeping you in the loop. And to help us do just that are journalist and author Monroe Anderson, PR consultant Michelle D'Amico, and NBC5 Chicago's entertainment reporter Leanne Trotter. Hello and welcome.
Thank you.
Well, we've just heard about the plan, CPS plans to close 54 schools. Now, about 1,000 teachers work at those schools. We're still not sure how many of those jobs will still exist when this is all over. But Chicago's loss could be Las Vegas's gain. We hear that Nevada has sent recruiters in to fill about 2,000 open positions in their education system where the population is growing. Now, Monroe, is this a fabulous idea, or maybe not so much, taking teachers from some of the city's worst performing schools?
Well, I think I've already figured out the new pitch line, and that's what happens in Chicago stays in Vegas. I think that it's good for Chicago teachers because these people are not horrible. I mean, obviously they're bad people in every field, but as a general rule, the teachers are good. They're working in a horrible environment and with children that are at terrible disadvantages. And so they go to Vegas, they get a new lease on life, plus it sends a message to Chicago that our teachers are wanted elsewhere,
Exactly.
so they respect them more.
Think of the obstacles that a Chicago teacher faces. Not only are they concerned about their future and the contributions they've made to their pensions, they are working in a big bureaucracy. Las Vegas's bureaucracy is much smaller. Many of them contend and complain about their unions as well. Charter schools are siphoning off the best kids, and the teachers are concerned about their future. If I were a Chicago teacher, single, or maybe a young family with not deep roots in the city, I would definitely consider the option of moving to Vegas.
Yeah, it's a good opportunity, but one thing that concerns me is that these teachers are familiar with what's going on with these kids and what's happening in these communities. They're a good resource, especially since everything is being turned upside down. And they need to be there to help with the transition because they're on the front lines. They know what's going on. They know what's needed.
Yeah, that's a good point. Yeah.
I would hate to see that those important resources would be, taken to Vegas. I mean, it's good for Vegas, but it's not really good for the community.
Especially, our teachers are so well trained. They're trained to deal with any crisis, plus they're trained educationally. There's an excellent mentorship program within the public school system. And for Vegas to be seizing on that depth of knowledge from our teachers, they're going to win.
Jobs in warm weather. That may be a draw too,
Exactly.
especially at this point in the year.
And conceivably, the removal of politics.
Maybe.
Yeah, maybe. I know, right?
They have politics in Vegas.
Perhaps not as bad as here.
I don't think the politics in Vegas is probably as well reported. I mean, we have such an aggressive news team, a news journalism community in Chicago that I've seen in other cities that hard news is not as hard in the smaller markets.
Right.
And it's probably the corruption, the scandals, the cronyism, the nepotism, it probably all exists in Las Vegas. They probably don't hear about it as much as we hear about it here.
Well, you raise an interesting point, too. When you look at something like this, even though these teachers are in low-performing schools, how much responsibility for education and test scores does inevitably fall on the shoulders of the teachers?
Disproportionately too much responsibility.
Well, and in Chicago, and these schools in depressed areas, I mean, they're dealing with crack babies. I mean, they have come of age. The crack epidemic hit 15, 20 years ago. And so some of these kids have been disadvantaged for life from the beginning because of their parents' addiction.
Yeah, so they're not only teachers, they have to pick up the slack where they're missing at home for the parents that aren't living up to what they need to live on. So they're teaching, they're babysitting, they're taking care of all these other needs, and I think that they have not been given their due.
Right.
I mean,
people have been demonizing
them.
public school
That's right.
teachers
And it's
for
not
no
them.
good cause. Yeah.
Right.
One of my clients has it's a school organization, a youth-based organization, and one of the teenagers within this organization told me, my mother didn't care if I got to school. I walk a mile to school because my mother it doesn't matter to her if I get there or not.
Clearly, there are a lot of factors.
There's
at play
a lot
here.
of families
So let's
like that.
move on to our next topic, which you mentioned, crime. Sheriff Tom Dart says basically Cook County Jail is about 8 inmates away from reaching capacity, and we are not even to the high-octane summer months. Officer Winter has been on duty, so they're worried about what may happen come June. And I'm wondering, folks here are looking to find other ways to put nonviolent offenders back into society, maybe with a bracelet or monitoring.
We're going to have these empty buildings, school buildings. Let's utilize some of that.
No, I have an idea. Let's quit putting people in jail for minor offenses like marijuana,
right,
prostitution. What we're doing is we make social issues criminal issues. The whole war on drugs what it has done in essence is brought a criminal culture to the inner city that didn't exist before. But if you're putting everybody in jail for every little reason, then instead of going to college, kids go to prison and learn other things. They still come back to the community. And so now you have the pants hanging low, because that's what was done in prison, because you couldn't keep the belts because you might hang yourself in the jails. Yeah, prison fashion. And the tattoos. I mean, you just see it over and over again, and it's now not confined to the inner city. It's throughout the American culture. And we need to stop criminalizing. We have more people in jail than any civilized first world country in the world, and that's crazy.
Now, this comes at the same point in time where the mayor, the state's attorney, the police superintendent are calling for more stringent gun violations and people to serve longer sentences. Can we afford this?
Well, I think that the stricter laws, we've always got a newly elected official, whether it's a mayor or a new sheriff or a new state's attorney, they want stricter laws, they want tougher laws, and they don't recognize or acknowledge the consequences that these tougher laws, if implemented, will send more people to an overcrowded prison. So where are those overcrowded people going to go? I think I heard Tom Dart say that, or Tony Preckwick will say that they're going to put some inmates in the cafeteria, and there's a great series this week on WBEZ about overcrowded prisons statewide, and there was someone mentioned, he was an inmate saying he went to jail because he shoplifted $100 worth of stuff at JCPenney's, and he had a bad record, and he wound up in jail for 2 years.
So we really need to rethink this.
This is more than just a county problem. This is a statewide legislative issue and a prison system issue, but I don't have faith that our state legislature can tackle this.
But the other problem is this: stricter laws do not prevent the violators from doing what they're doing anyway. Right. You know, a stricter law, they don't follow the law anyway. So if they're going to have a tougher penalty, that's not going to stop them. And so we really, this is the end product. We really need to focus on what's causing all of these problems in the first place.
That's
we need to go back to square one.
Moving forward, our final topic today, we'll turn the corner and make a sharp left turn, energy drinks. Senator Dick Durbin has sent letters to the manufacturers of a number of these energy drinks after children have ended up in the hospital, saying, please stop supporting Little League functions and things that pertain to children, because these drinks, he says, could be dangerous to kids. Do we need further regulations of these drinks?
Yes, yes. I have to tell you, I remember the first time I had an energy drink and I thought I was having a heart attack. And it was so scary. And I'm an adult. Could you imagine the kids?
Well, I have teenage daughters, and they have tried energy drinks and have shared with me how freaked out they were after they drank them. And however, at the same time, I'm a marketer. So to tell me, the maker of an energy drink, no, I'm not, but if I were in that position, to tell me that I can't sponsor a Little League team, that's a challenge.
Yeah, but then what you have to do is modify your product. When I was 5 years old, I used to have coffee with my grandmother.
Me too.
But what she'd do is it'd be water coffee. It'd be about this much coffee and a lot of water. If you're going to sell your product to children, it should be much smaller container and not as strong as if you were selling it to adults. And it's that basic. I mean, if you're selling stuff that's going to keep me up all night.
But you've seen those little 5-hour energy drink bottles, right?
Well,
That's a small container, but
I'm
it's
talking about with less caffeine.
It's a potent mix.
Okay, yeah, right. A combination of less. You only can have 12% alcohol in a drink. That's moderate.
We need more
moderated. So we need
I mean, just to
regulations.
give you some idea, some of those energy drinks have 160 milligrams of caffeine. The American Academy of Pediatrics says 100 milligrams is the limit. But if you drink a tall Starbucks coffee,
right,
260
so
milligrams.
are you going to start regulating Starbucks now, or any
Dunkin' Donuts.
caffeinated Coke or Pepsi? It's a challenge, and there's no easy answer.
Something to think about.
I think it's easy enough. Just you don't, if it's in a bottle or a can, then you say X amount, just as you do with alcohol. You say X amount of caffeine in it.
There you go. Thank you, Monroe Anderson, Michelle D'Amico, Leanne Trotter. Thank you for your time and for joining us today.
Absolutely, thank you.
It is a shiny yet peculiar-looking structure located in Chicago's Millennium Park. Thousands of people touch it daily. But curious minds wonder, how exactly do you get all those handprints off the bean? Our friends at WBEZ have the answer.
Hi, my name is Tim Gerbe. I just moved to Chicago about 4 years ago. And whenever I have friends come and visit me, of course, the one thing they want to do is see the bean and take a picture with it. Any silly pose with their hands against it or looking at the bean. However, I wonder, with all the thousands of people who come here every day, how the heck do they clean the bean?
My name is Richard Arzola, and I work for Stuart Dean, and I'm a metal polisher. This type of metal is called mirror finish because when you're done with it, you get a real high gloss. It's not as much work as some of the other metals where you don't have to strip or lack or anything like that. So, all you do is polish it, bring out the shine.
When I do it, I like to see what I did and man, stand back and look at it and say, man, I did that, You get a sense of pride out of it.
The conversation continues right now on WYCC.org. I'm Barbara Pinto.
And I'm Chris Bury. Have a good night.